This is where Birmingham made its biggest promise yet. A £2 billion regeneration that would transform Ladywood. At first it sounded like a familiar headline. Investment, renewal and opportunity. But behind that single number was a plan so large it would quietly reshape an entire inner city community over decades, not months. And long before most people realised what was coming, Birmingham City Council, working with private developers, approved a long-term regeneration master plan for Ladywood, a central area just west of the city centre. The scheme has been valued between £2 billion and £2.5 billion. This proposes up to 12,000 new homes, new public spaces, and a denser, more urban neighbourhood. It's one of the largest regeneration projects in the city's history, designed to stretch over 20 to 30 years, and positioned as a solution to Birmingham's housing shortage and economic pressures. On paper, it's a bold vision, but scale matters because projects this big don't just add homes, they rewrite who a place is for. And the deeper you look into how this plan came together, the more complicated the promise becomes. Ladywood wasn't chosen by accident, because while the spotlight stayed on the shiny developments closer to the city centre, planners were already eyeing up the quieter estates just beyond it. Places close enough to matter, but far enough to change without much resistance. Ladywood sits just from Broad Street, Edgebanson and Birmingham's canal network. Much of its housing dates back to the 1960s and 70s, built as a low-rise council estate with green spaces between blocks. The council argued these layouts are outdated, too low density and expensive to maintain, but with limited public funds and rising demand for housing, partnering with private developers unlocked a way to unlock land value and massively increase housing numbers without the council paying up front. In other words, Ladywood wasn't failing, it was strategically valuable. But the real turning point comes when you look at how this transformation is supposed to happen. This regeneration doesn't start with building, it starts with clearing, because beneath the language of a renewal sits a quieter reality. Entire streets and estates marked not for improvement, but for removal, often long before a replacement exists. Large part of Ladywood are earmarked for demolition, including council homes, leasehold flats, and privately owned houses, even where properties are structurally sound. The council says refurbishment wouldn't deliver enough homes or long-term value. The new vision replaces low-rise estates with mid and high-rise blocks, sharply increasing density and population. Housing tenure also shifts. Fewer traditional social rent homes, more affordable rent, shared ownership, and private sales. This isn't just a redevelopment, it's a demographic reset. And that's where the human cost begins to surface. For residents, regeneration didn't arrive as an opportunity, it arrived as uncertainty. Because while plans spoke in decades and diagrams, real people were suddenly forced to think about months, and whether the place they built a life in still had a future. Many Ladywood residents are older, long-term tenants who lived in their homes for decades, rely on local support networks. Others bought through right to buy or purchased recently, unaware their homes could be demolished. Some now face compensation that may not allow them to stay in the area. Reports describe anxiety, distress and a sense of powerlessness, especially along elderly residents being asked to move later in life. Regeneration may be phased, but its emotional impact is immediate. And as the pressure grew, residents didn't stay silent. Ladywood pushed back. What began as a private worry turned into organised resistance, as residents started comparing notes and realising this wasn't happening to one household, but instead an entire community. Groups like Ladywood Unite formed to challenge the plans, arguing that homes could be refurbished rather than demolished, and that consultation was inadequate. Campaigners warned of displacement and social cleansing. A judicial review was launched, questioning whether the council had properly considered equality impacts. While the legal challenge didn't stop the scheme, it delayed progress and drew national attention to Ladywood's situation. This fight revealed a growing trust gap between residents and the council. But the biggest contradiction in this story lies somewhere else entirely. Because Birmingham isn't short of homes, it's full of empty ones. Entire properties sit boarded up, fenced off and quietly forgotten. often just streets away from those being told there's no alternative. Birmingham has thousands of long-term empty homes, many held vacant due to regeneration plans. As estates are earmarked for future demolition, repairs stop, tenants are moved out gradually, and homes remain unused for years. A process residents called regeneration blight. Meanwhile, families live in temporary accommodation, hotels, or out of the area. Critics are arguing refurbishing empty homes would be faster, cheaper, and less disruptive than demolition. The crisis isn't just about supply, it's about priorities. And that contradiction leaves us with one final question hanging. Ladywood's regeneration is still unfolding. Some residents won't be affected for years, others face change much sooner. The council insists this is a long-term planning for a growing city, while campaigners see a housing strategy driven by land value, not lived reality. But at the same time, empty homes remain unused, and trust continues to erode. The question now isn't whether Ladywood will change, it's whether Birmingham can regenerate without repeating the same cycles of displacement, delays and division. And as more neighbourhoods are quietly lined up for transformation, this story may only be the beginning. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about being anti-regeneration. Cities have to grow, and Birmingham does need new homes. But when you stand back and look at the full picture, it's hard to ask whether we're fixing the right problems in the right order. When families are stuck in temporary accommodation, when elderly residents are living with consistent uncertainty, and when perfectly usable homes are left empty for years, something isn't lining up. Regeneration should make life better for the people already there, not just the people who might arrive one day. And until that question is properly answered, this story doesn't really end here. If you enjoyed this video and want me to cover more stories just like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel, and comment your thoughts on this in the comments below.